insight into what life is like in Guantanamo and the experience of being caught up in America's extrajudicial black hole of relentless interrogation and torture. But despite the concerted attempts to dehumanize and destroy Mohamedou over these years, what's also incredible about the book is that his humanity and his humor survive intact, and he actually, at the very end of the book, there's an extraordinary passage where, I think he would have told you, Nancy, that he actually wanted to sit down and have tea with the people who've imprisoned him. He's not actually been allowed to see the book. He's never seen the book. In June, his case comes up for review, on the 2nd of June. So today is part of a concerted campaign to make sure that when that review comes up, Mohamedou is finally released. Nancy, you're just back from a visit to Guantanamo, so I really wanted to ask you first, how is Mohamedou, and perhaps if you could give us a sense of what it's like to actually go to Guantanamo.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. Thank you to all my friends who are here, who've come, and to all the rest of you, and to everyone who's supported Mohamedou and supports him in this effort to get him released, which is really everything that the book, and we now have a movie contract, and everything. It's all about getting this innocent man home. And I was there a couple weeks ago. I'm American, I have to stand up. I can't talk and sit at the same time. I was there a couple weeks ago. It's a very bizarre place for us. I live in New Mexico, which is at the other end of the country. I have to fly to Fort Lauderdale and then take a little plane down to Guantanamo. And because American planes can't fly over Cuban airspace as of yet, it has to go all the way around to the Bahamas and up, and so it takes quite a bit of time. You land there, go through security, and then there's a ferry. If you look on the map, you see that Guantanamo is a bay, a little bay, and you land on what's the leeward side, which is also known as the lonely side, because there's nothing there except that's where they keep the lawyers so that we can't mess about and cause trouble. And until about a year ago, the lawyers who did the habeas cases, which is what Mohamedou's is, as opposed to the military commission case, we also have a client, but that's a very different situation. We were not allowed to, as somebody says, free range. We had to stay over there and then take the ferry in the morning, meet an escort. You meet an escort, military escort, who takes you to the first stop, which is the McDonald's. Sometimes the Subway, but most people like the McDonald's better for breakfast. The Subway used to be better. They used to make fresh eggs, but they don't do that anymore, so it's pretty bad. So everyone, we go to the McDonald's, get breakfast. You can bring food, sometimes into your client, depends on what the rules are. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And then everyone goes to a badging office, gets a badge, and then we all set off for the prison and go through the various security. I see Mohamedou now where he lives. I can't tell you more than that, but I spend the day with him. I usually stay to lunch and spend the day and have lunch with him. So I'm there from about 9:30 in the morning till 4:30. When you have to leave depends on actually the prayer schedule. They try to get all the lawyers out before whenever that prayer is, which is around 4:30. And then we go back out, and until recently, you'd have to go back, maybe stop. There's a Navy exchange, which is like a giant, I don't know, what's the English equivalent of Walmart, but it's kind of what it is.
Tesco.
Tesco, and grab stuff for dinner and then take it back. Now that the lawyers are allowed to actually stay on the windward side, you can go to the Irish pub, which is about the best place to eat on the island. There's Jamaican jerk food, but there's also a lot of mosquitoes there, although the food's not bad. And there's there's the mess hall, which is cheap and probably has the best food and the freshest food. And then you go back for the evening and you start the whole thing the next day. That's pretty much what it's like. It's unusual for a lawyer to get to spend, I've had clients in jail, and usually you go in, you spend an hour with them, you come out. But for the last 10 years, I've spent 2 or 3 days at a time with Mohamedou. And for years, after we won his case in 2010, and the government appealed, and then the Court of Appeal sent it back, and nothing happened for several years. Those visits were really just social visits. They were just to make sure he was okay. You know, he can't call. Until recently, he had no communication with his family. Now they do have Skype calls, so he and Yadi and his other family can communicate through the Red Cross. But for years, there was nothing, nothing at all. And so when he writes a letter, the letter actually comes to Washington, or a place outside Washington, and I get an email saying, "You've received a letter from your client, what should we do with it?" And there are 2 choices. They either put it in my secure, we have, in the secure room, we have a filing cabinet, they can put it in there, or I can send it to what's called a privilege team of people whose names I'm not even allowed to know, and they decide whether it can be cleared or whether it remains classified, because everything he says, even what he tells me he would like to have for breakfast the next day, is presumed to be classified. So it's very, very cumbersome representation. I believe it is cumbersome intentionally to make it difficult for lawyers to represent their clients. There's no reason for a lot of this. The rules change constantly. I can give you another example. He needed new shoes, and they're not giving him new shoes. And he showed me the shoes, and I went to the next and bought a pair of Nikes that looked just like the ones he had. And when I came in the next day, they said, "Well, those have laces. He can't have laces." And I go in and I look at his shoes, and they had laces. So I went back out and said, "The shoes he's wearing have laces." And the guy said, "Oh, well, in that case, maybe he can't have them." So, you know, you just never know what it's like. My very first meeting with him, which I know Joe wants me to mention, was in 2005. It was my first trip to Guantanamo. I didn't know anything about him at all, except that he was there, and wrote him a letter and told him I was coming with a lawyer named Sylvia Royce because she spoke French, and we figured and hoped that he spoke at least French because he was from Mauritania, and that we wouldn't need an interpreter with us since we were doing this for free and didn't want to have to pay for an interpreter. Sylvia and I met for the first time in Fort Lauderdale, and flew there. And we went in to see him, and at that time, there was a place there was a particular hut where you saw your clients, not necessarily where he lived. And we went in, and he stood up. He stood up, and he put his arms out, but he didn't move. And he smiled at us, but he didn't move, and we didn't know much about him. Did he want us to stay at some distance or not? And we took a chance because we realized that he couldn't move because he was shackled to the floor with a shackle around his ankle like a dog. And so we just walked into his embrace, and I'll never forget that moment that he just held on to us. We're both old enough to be his mother, this young man, and he just held on as tight as he could because we were the first friendly people he had seen in 3 years, who were not there to harm him, were not there to torture him, were not there to interrogate him. And he was so excited, he had received my letter, so he had wanted me to know something about him. So he'd asked the guards to give him paper, and they'd given him this green notebook. It's like a kid's notebook. And he'd written 90 pages of who he was, his biography, and also about the torture and the interrogation that had gone on. At that time, of course, we had no idea whether any of it was true, which turned out to be. He wrote it in English, we took it home, and that's what became the beginnings of this book. By the end of the year, we had 466 pages that he had written to us. But that's how this all started. And then we just proceeded to fight for his release. The habeas case, we won, and then the government appealed. The government appealed all the cases at that time because everyone was winning, and the Obama administration wasn't apparently happy with that, convinced the Court of Appeals to change the legal standard and the evidentiary standard to make it virtually impossible for anyone to win. And after that, the judges pretty much stopped hearing the cases again. Then the president in 2011 issued an executive order, which I thought meant that it was a real order, that said that everyone in Guantanamo should have a periodic review board hearing. This is not in front of a judge, there's no lawyers involved except us, if he has lawyers. But they're the intelligence agencies to decide whether he's a current threat to the national security of the United States. Everyone was supposed to have one by 2012. We got excited. I started writing to them, asking when are we going to have this hearing. And the first one was in 2013. As of today, there have been 27. 20 people have been cleared for release, and I think of that group, about 10 have been released. It may have changed a little bit in the last few days. We didn't get that hearing until we didn't get the order saying we're going to have a hearing until January of this year. And now we have a hearing scheduled for June 2nd. This is a hearing where Mohamedou will testify by video link. They can ask him questions. There will be some classified evidence that he won't get to see. There may be some that we don't get to see, but that the other side gets to see, which raises interesting issues of secrecy. But we're very hopeful that he will be released. And if you read the book, you'll see he's never, in 14 or 15 years, had a single disciplinary violation. Everyone in Guantanamo likes him. The guards have dedicated books to him, and he talks about it in his book that one of the guards, a young American enlisted guy, wrote to him, "Dear Mohamedou," they call him Pillow, and there's another long story about that, but it says, "Dear Pill, Allah always has a plan, and I know there's a plan for you. We've become friends. I wish you the best." And these guards really cared about him. And everyone who has ever encountered him, except for the torturers, have cared about him. And as for them, he has forgiven them. He's tried to understand why people torture. He said nobody likes to torture other people. He talks about it in the book. And he just wants to go home and start his life. That's what it's all about. That's why we need all the support from everyone to make that happen.
Thank you, Nancy. We're going to talk a little bit more about your expectations of what will happen. I just wanted to go back a little bit further into the story of how Mohamedou ended up in Guantanamo. So he effectively disappeared in November 2001. He'd been living in Germany, he'd been travelling in Germany, Canada, he'd then gone back to Mauritania. And a CIA rendition plane took him from his home in Mauritania, first to prison in Jordan, no extradition proceedings, in violation of the Constitution of Mauritania. They effectively allowed the Americans to kidnap him. He then was sent to Bagram in Afghanistan and then Guantanamo. And in the book, he very dryly describes it as an endless world tour of detention and interrogation. I wanted to ask you, Yahdi, what it was, if you can remember, when Mohamedou disappeared. So as far as your family was concerned, suddenly he had disappeared. And I just wonder if you can remember what happened then. What did your family think? What did you do?
Nachdem er gegangen ist, was habt ihr gemacht, was habt ihr gewusst und nicht gewusst, was ist mit eurer Familie?
Erst einmal bedanke ich mich herzlich bei allen, die hier gekommen sind. Meine englische Kenntnisse erreichen gerade einen normalen Satz aufzubauen, aber nicht so eine lange Geschichte aufzubauen.
First of all, I would like to thank you all who are here. I speak a bit of English, but not enough. Yahdi actually said that he can maybe try a couple of sentences, but he prefers it this way. So I will interpret from German to English for him.
Ich bedanke mich, wie gesagt, bei allen. Ich bedanke mich bei ACLO und höchstpersönlich bei Susi für diese gute Organisation. Ich danke Nancy für diesen langjährigen Kampf und für jeden, der für uns fast geschrien oder gesagt hat, im Namen von Mohammed und meiner Familie.
I would like to thank you, the organization ACLU. I would like to thank Susie for her help. I would like to thank Nancy for her help and for all what she does for Mohamedou. Thank you.
Zurück zu Ihrer Frage. Ich war in dieser Zeit, wo Mohammed gestorben ist, in Deutschland. Ich hatte gerade mein Abi und ich war nicht sicher, ob ich in Frankreich studiere, weil wir Französisch sprechen, oder in Deutschland. Mohammed hat mir doch Deutschland empfohlen, weil es besser sein soll.
The time everything happened, I was in Germany finishing my studies. I was there because Mohammed sent me there because he wanted a better life for me.
Mohammed war natürlich der Grund, warum ich in Deutschland studiert habe. Er hat mir finanziell und seelisch auch viel geholfen. Und ich hatte mit ihm jeden Tag Kontakt. Damals gab ja nicht so viele Möglichkeiten außer Mail. Und jeden Tag, 2 Monate später, brach das Kontakt komplett zusammen.
So Mohammed was the reason why I was in Germany, and he helped me financially and emotionally in that time. Well, the communication was a bit limited that time, so we mainly communicated via email, but we did communicate regularly via email, but of a sudden the communication stopped.
Ich habe durch meine Familie probiert zu wissen, warum mein Bruder nicht mehr schreibt und sich meldet. Ja, gab mir die Frage, nee, er hat keine Zeit, er ist da. Ich hatte aber dabei kein gutes Gefühl, weil ich meiner Regierung nicht vertraue. Und ich weiß, wie das in arabischen Ländern aussieht. Er hat immer gesagt, er ist da, er hat eine Reise, die wollen nicht, dass ich mir Sorgen mache. Genau.
So I asked, after I didn't receive any emails from Mohamedou, I asked my family, where is he, what is happening, and they said different things. They were not saying anything in particular. He thinks the main reason was they didn't want him to be worried. So, I mean, they didn't know themselves, but they didn't want him to worry, so they said different things, that he's there, so for him not to worry.
Ich hatte dabei kein gutes Gefühl und dann meine Familie, ehrlich gesagt, wussten auch nicht, wo mein Bruder ist. Die haben immer die Regierung gefragt, Polizei haben immer gesagt, wir haben ihn sicher in eine sichere Stelle, damit ihn Amerikaner nicht entführen. Meine Familie haben immer da Geld geschickt, hat meine Mutter und Kleidung. In dieser Zeit ist Mohammed schon längst in Jordanien sofort
da. Mauritania said repeatedly to our family that Mohamedou is in a safe place in Mauritania, so our mother was sending him clothes, money, in the hope that he will receive it all, but that time he was already tortured in Jordan.
Ich war in der Universität in Deutschland und durch Zufall habe ich in einer Zeitung gelesen, dass Mohammed in Guantanamo ist. Und Nachricht kam so, dass er seit Wochen in Guantanamo ist, wobei ich vor ein paar Tagen mit meiner Familie gesprochen habe und die haben mir gesagt, dass er in Mauretanien ist. Ich habe dann sofort meine Familie angerufen.
I received the news that he is in Guantanamo via a newspaper in Germany, and I was so surprised after I read it that I contacted my family, because a couple of days ago they told me that he is in Mauritania in a safe place. So I contacted them that I just read that he is in Guantanamo.
Meine Familie haben genau den großen Fehler gemacht für Mohammed. Die haben die Regelung verbraucht. Die haben gesagt, das kann nicht sein, dass uns Polizei anlügen. Die haben uns mehrfach gesichert, dass er in Mauretanien ist. Und du sagst uns jetzt, dass er in Guantanamo ist. Die haben mir das nicht geglaubt. Erst ein paar Monate später bekamen wir den ersten Brief von meinem Bruder.
Our family, my family, didn't believe that he is in Guantanamo because the police, the officers, the Mauritanian police and officers said repeatedly that he is in a safe place in Mauritania, and we received the first letter from Mohamedou from Guantanamo. What is the date?
Das ist 8.8.2002,
Yeah.
aber wir haben das erst 2003. Der kommt über viele Wege und so weiter.
So the letter, the date here is the 8th of August 2002, but they received the letter 2003.
Genau. Ja, was sollen wir machen? Viele Möglichkeiten haben wir nicht. Viele Möglichkeiten haben wir leider nicht. Ab diesem Moment hat mir mindestens meine Familie geglaubt. Und in Mauretanien kann man, genau wie in den arabischen Staaten, die keine Demokratie haben, kann man gegen Regierung nicht mal einen Anwalt organisieren. Also wir waren damit gebundene Hände.
So I was thinking, what are our options? What can we do? At least I knew that my family believes me after we received that letter, but we didn't know what we can do.
Man kann nicht mal einen Anwalt gegen Regierung organisieren. Man kann nicht mal einen Anwalt.
Yeah, one cannot organize a lawyer to fight Mauritania.
Das geht nicht. Kein Anwalt hat sich das getraut.
Nobody wanted to do that.
Thank you, Ghazi. Matt, so I just want to go back to really what we can expect and what happens next with the review. And you've obviously having sort of been through the habeas case that you won, and then only to see it horrendously pulled out of your hands. How optimistic are you about this new process?
Well, I am hopeful. I do know that President Obama wants, at this point, finally, to close Guantanamo. Actually, he wants to move it to the United States, but I think that the only way he can do that is to have so few people there that it's too expensive, and the U.S. Congress will finally decide that they can move the rest of them to the U.S., which is not the answer that I want, but I think that's what the administration wants to do. But from Mohamedou's standpoint, that means that we have a better chance that he will get out. After this hearing, if all 6 of the agencies, this is the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, the FBI, the CIA, and who knows who else, they have to unanimously agree that he can be cleared for release, that he is not a security danger for the United States if he's released. Then the Secretary of Defense has to personally certify to the Congress that he's not a security risk. Then Congress has 30 days in which to ponder this matter. And if all that happens, then he can be cleared. And then the State Department, the Department of State, has an envoy whose job it is to find a place for him to go. Now, we heard last night from the Mauritanian official here in London that Mauritania will accept him back. There are 2 other Mauritanians who've gone back and who are living and without any problems. So obviously that's what we want, and we're hopeful. I can't imagine why they would keep him, but of course we have not yet even seen what the government has a dossier that we're supposed to see, and we haven't even seen it yet, and we're not sure when we will see it. But that's the process.
And are you going to try and apply to see the dossier, or do you just have to wait?
Well, they're supposed to provide it. They will provide the dossier, or at least the unclassified dossier. Then there's a classified dossier which we'll get to see, but Mohamedou will not get to see it. And then part of the hearing will be open. We have declarations and letters. That will all be open. They may ask him some questions that they will then transcribe. Some of those may be open. And then there'll be secret proceedings that he won't get to see. That's how the whole thing works. During this habeas case, they had people standing at the side of the courtroom from agencies. I have no idea what agencies they were from, and they had paddles that said stop and go. And it had to do with when to turn off the audio feed from Guantanamo so he couldn't hear what was being said. And they stood there with their paddles, with their stop and go paddles, which made the whole thing appear to be somewhat ridiculous. And in fact, at the beginning of that hearing, the judge said, "Would you all like to introduce yourself?" And they said, "No, sir."
Given the terrifying Kafkaesque scenario that is Guantanamo, how much difference do you think public pressure can make? So obviously, one of the reasons for tonight and for the event that there was in Westminster last night, where the Mauritanian charge d'affaires, to everyone's great delight, made a commitment to receiving Mohamedou if he's released. There's this petition that Susie mentioned at the beginning, change.org. There's a letter going to the Secretary of State in America. Can all of this, and if everybody here gets involved, can all of this make a difference?
I have to believe that it does make a difference. We don't know what difference it makes, but I believe that part of the reason that Shakar Amr got out ultimately was the tremendous support for him. And there's been support for other prisoners. And the more people who know about it, I think the more pressure it puts on the government. And I think that is significant. The court, that's the whole reason that we fought so hard to get this book out, is because sometimes the only court where one can get justice is the court of public opinion. And there is no justice in Guantanamo, so we have to look to the public for it. And we have to believe that it does make a difference.